Hi, everyone. This is Bridget Richardson. I'm the Assistant Director of Ecumenical and Pastoral Initiatives at the Nesti Center for Faith and Culture. And we're doing this daily just to talk to different people around Houston about COVID-19, the coronavirus, and learning about it from their vantage point. So today we're talking to Gina Reynoso. She is with TMO, the Metropolitan Organization. So hi, Gina. Will you share with us a little bit about you and TMO?
Sure. Well, thank you, first of all, for the invitation and the opportunity to be able to talk to everyone. So I am an organizer with TMO, the Metropolitan Organization. And so TMO is an organization of institutions. It's a 40-year-old organization that is dedicated to developing power within and leadership among people. So we would say like ordinary citizens in order for them to be able to take action on the issues that currently affect their life. So we're part of a larger network that's called the IAF, the Industrial Areas Foundation. And so it's a nationwide, the IAF is like a nationwide organizing institute with over 60-year history. And so we organize with institutions, so different churches of different denominations, with nonprofit organizations, and we also work with schools.
Okay, cool. And what kind of work do you do with them?
So we do different things. So we're a broad-based organization that consists of dues-paying institutions. We are a nonpartisan organization, so we don't endorse candidates or political parties. So we are also considered, or we are a multi-issue. We work on different issues that come out of hundreds of individual or small group conversations. And so it's through those conversations that we are able to find out or learn from families, learn from the communities, like what are the pressures that are impacting them, like what are their families facing. And so in current conversations that we had with the coronavirus, we had learned that, well, people aren't working, people in the restaurant industry, in even construction, they're being laid off, even teachers. And so they were worried about, well, if we're not working, we're not going to get paid. So we're not going to have enough money to pay rent at the end of the month. So they were having to choose either we pay rent or we eat. And no one should have to make that decision.
Right.
And so it was through that we were able to hold a press conference, which was last Saturday or March 14th. So a group of clergy got together as well as lay leaders from our member institutions to call on the Houston mayor and Harris County judge, asking them to do create an extension for these families. And so that for us was a win. So we were able to win that. So we got the judge to say, issue I think it's called a moratorium, 60 days, no landlord can kick out or evict their tenant. So that for us was a big win. And that came out of the conversations that we were able to have with individuals and with families.
Okay. And a lot of your work also primarily right now is in terms of educating people about the census and to get them to fill that out. So can you describe a little bit of that work?
Yeah, so we've been working around the census or trying to educate the community since August of last year, the end of August of last year. And so it's been something that it's been ongoing. But it's been challenging now since people aren't allowed to gather. It's been challenging moving forward. So we're trying to see what it is that we can do to be able to keep encouraging people to complete the census.
Yeah. And do you want to just kind of give us a brief overview? Like you and I have talked so many times about the census and the intricacies of it all, but can you give us a brief overview of what it is, why we do it, why is it important, and to dispel some rumors or things that things might be on the census?
Sure, and ask me questions as I go along if something is not clear. So I think it's fair to start with what is the census. So the census, so every 10 years, the United States counts everyone who lives in the country. So irregardless of their immigration status, so US citizens, residents, and even if you're undocumented, everyone counts. So no one is excluded. And based on the census count, it's decided who gets the resources, who gets the funding, and who gets the representation. And so one of the reasons, there's different reasons why it's important. So the census count will indicate the number of Congress people that we have to represent our area. And it will also determine the drawing of the lines of the electoral districts. So that's very important. And then there's also $800 billion a year that is allocated towards the states, depending again on the census count. So every year for the past 10 years, Texas has received close to $60 billion a year that goes towards different programs. And I think it's important to note that we've gotten close to $60 billion a year, but we can get more if we are accurately counted and if people are counted. And so this funding goes to different programs. So it goes to programs, healthcare programs, so programs such as Medicaid and CHIP, Medicare Part B. It goes for programs, education programs, so programs such as Head Start. If you have children that are in pre-K, they're benefiting from these programs. We also have Pell Grants and student loans for young adults who are going to college. And it also influences nutrition programs. So programs such as food stamps, WIC for women with young children, and the school breakfast and lunch program.
And you had mentioned for our purposes, we're on a university campus. You also do student loans, and what was it, the Pell Grant?
Yeah, the Pell Grants and the subsidized student loans.
Okay.
So it's very important. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what can people expect when they get to the census and they're ready to fill it out? Like what kinds of questions are on there and what can we expect?
Sure. So I think it's also important to know the communities that I've been working with, it's mostly Spanish-speaking immigrant communities. And so it's also very important to make sure that the message of the census is completely safe, information is confidential. And so at this point, families should have already received their initial invitation, inviting them to complete the census, invitation by mail, inviting them to complete the census. And so the census questionnaire will ask you the number of people living in the home, whether it's a house, if it's an apartment, it's a mobile home, the name, the gender, the age, and the date of birth of everyone living in the household, if they are of Hispanic origin, or what their race is of each person, the relationship of each person to the person actually completing the census. And it will also ask for a telephone number in case the Census Bureau needs to follow up if something wasn't clear. Or if something was missing, they are able to follow up. So that's what it will ask. And I think it's also important to note what it won't ask. So it won't ask you for an ID. It won't ask you for your citizenship or immigration status. It won't ask you for your social security number, nor bank account or payment info. If you use public benefits or if you have a criminal background on your record, it won't ask you that.
Okay, so it truly is just a count of the people in the United States. And I know you're doing a lot of work reaching out to faith leaders to kind of get them on board so that they can educate people about filling out the census. What kind of work have you done in that regard?
Yeah, so we started very early on, the end of August, trying to make people aware because we realized it has to be something that has been ongoing and people need to hear this message more than once. So we started with doing presentations, but our approach has been working with institutions. So contacting the pastors or the key religious leaders at each institution that we're working with to work with them and figure out what is the best strategy to reach your parishioners, your congregants. And so it could be something as simple as if they have a church bulletin, putting a flyer in there, talking about the census, posters around the church. And then there was also, I know you and I have talked about this, the idea of hosting like a Census Sunday. And so a Census Sunday would consist of maybe the pastor inviting people, or if you haven't completed your census, you can do so after service or before service. We will have people assisting you. And so that was also another idea that we had. But again, with the coronavirus, those plans have changed. And so now we're trying to take a different approach. So leaders have decided that, well, if we can't do it physically, maybe we can talk to people by phone. So calling them and asking them, well, how are you doing? How is the coronavirus situation affecting you? And also that's another opportunity for us to hear from them and what it is that they're going through and if there's something we can act on, but also as well using that opportunity to ask them, have you completed the census? Do you have any questions? And to be able to communicate with them that way.
Yeah. And have you seen any fruit from that, or have you heard back from the pastors?
Not necessarily. We actually, I've been talking to leaders, so they want to start at the end of this week and especially next week because they're calling next week Census Week. So we're trying to ramp up and decide what it is that we want to do.
Okay, great. And so you're always kind of in contact with people to rally them together. And you and I in previous conversations have talked about how meaningful it can be for your leader or your pastor to stand up on your behalf and say, you're important to me, I'm going to advocate for this thing for you. So what is that relationship like to work with the pastors and the faith leaders of all different religious traditions in the way that TMO does, not only for the census, but just in general?
I think it's something that's very unique. I don't think there's another organization that's able to do that. So be able to bring together a group of diverse people. And I think that there's a lot of richness in that. And seeing them kind of negotiate on what it is that they want to do. So I think it's very important. And in regards specifically to the census, I mean, that's important to all of us, regardless of whether you're rich and poor, or if you live on the north side or the south side of Houston, or the east or the west. I mean, we're all going to benefit from this funding. But it's something, again, that's not controversial, and it's something that we all can participate regardless of our status here in the United States. So it's like a civic activity that even people who are undocumented can also participate in. And so I think it's also being able to share that message with people. Like you can still, like you can be a good citizen, even though you might not have a status, legal status here, but you're still able to contribute in that sense.
Okay, so how do people get started? We got a letter in the mail, but is there a website? And I know that y'all have your website as well.
Yeah, and I could share the flyer with you as well if that's something that we can share. So you can do it online. You can visit my2020census.gov. And you will be asked for a unique ID number that you should have gotten in the mail along with your invitation. But if you don't have that, don't worry, you are still able to complete the census just by inputting your address. You can also call by phone. So in English, the phone number you can dial is 1-844-330-2020. And phone lines are open 7 days a week. So that is also another way. I know that some families as well have received the paper questionnaire, so they are able to complete it using the paper questionnaire and mailing it back to the census.
Okay. And you mentioned how this is a civil activity that people can do, and it's also a real social justice issue. And, we've talked about Catholic social teaching and things like that. So how do you see these two things coming together with your work at TMO and then also through trying to get people to fill out the census? How do you see this as an expression of justice for people to fill this out?
I think there's two things. The first one I would say is, I mean, as a practicing Catholic, and other faith traditions as well, each individual, like we need to respect the dignity of each individual. So what is one way we can do that? By recognizing the other person. By recognizing them, you can make sure that they're counted. So that's one of the ways that I can kind of piece that together. And then I think the other thing is to recognize the solidarity aspect of it. Like we all live in this city, we all live in this country, we all live in this city, in the state, and in this country. And so it's important for us to recognize that and stand together and say, like, this funding benefits us all. If we don't complete the census, if we don't do something, the people who do act, the people who do complete the census will receive the funding that our community deserves as well.
Well, great. I think that's all the questions I have. Do you have anything else to add about TMO or the census, or just general information that you want people to kind of rally behind this?
Yeah, there's actually, well, as we stand right now, we have actually, because the coronavirus is such, like the pandemic is still going on, we actually have a petition, a TMO, COVID-19, we're calling it Economic Support for Families agenda. So that's something else that I would like to share maybe to the people watching, for them to be able to sign on. We're calling on the US congressional leaders to clarify how people can apply for federal disaster programs. So that would include like the disaster food stamps, unemployment, paid leave, and other relief programs that happen. We're also calling on the Census Bureau to extend the census respond deadline. So they already have, they've given 2 weeks of extra time at the end. So that's also good, but we don't know if that's going to be enough. And there's also legislation to be able to pay. I think right now we're at like $1,000 or $2,000 to each for every taxpayer because of the crisis that we're living in. So that's something else that I think we can share that I think would be beneficial, because it's another way for us to be acting in solidarity and be able to act. It might seem like we're at home, we can't do anything, but we can all rally behind this, sign it, and make our voices heard.
Yeah, so how do people opt into that? How do they sign it and get more information?
So you can visit our website. So that's tmohouston.org. And that the petition is one of the first things that you should see as you click our site.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Gina. I really appreciate it. As I always say, I enjoy talking to you because you just have so much energy and I love the work that you do. So thank you for serving the Houston community and the underserved, on behalf of, our faith tradition and also just people of goodwill in general. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.